Joining me today is Mallon, President of ExxonMobil Upstream. Liam, welcome back to Guyana. How are you today?
I'm good.
How was your flight coming in?
Very smooth until we hit Guyana. Then a little bumpy, but normal at this stage, just a little rain, but yeah, very smooth. Great to be back again.
Tell us a bit about the operations in Guyana. Liza 1 is producing, Liza Unity came on stream. We celebrated 1 year actually on February 11th of that vessel producing oil. Prosperity is going to set sail by the end of this month. Then we have 1 Guyana Yellowtail. These are a lot of projects in a short time. Tell us about that rapid acceleration of development.
Well, Chris, you know, it's only 3 years ago, actually January 3 years ago. We were in this very same hotel celebrating, if you remember, first oil on Destiny. And we had this great big fireworks display. Probably one of the most impressive we've seen, but it's hard to believe that that's only 3 years ago. And here we are now 3 years later with you know, another big vessel online. And as you said, another one about to sail from Singapore. So, you know, we've gone from virtually, if you think about it, from the exploration stage to production in 5 years, which is, you know, more than half the industry record for these type of developments. But not only that, we're growing and starting up a new boat almost every year. So the pace at which this is going on is unprecedented. And just as importantly, you know, we're doing it in a very responsible way, both environmentally and safety, and from all those perspectives. It's just the most impressive thing that I think I've worked on in my career.
I think you've mentioned that normally a development under these circumstances may not have come online until about 2024 from Liza 1 discovery in 2015. Is this an industry record in terms of the pace at which we're moving? Certainly
not normal, but I think you have to think about it in terms of deep water. You know, our industry has several different plays and places where oil and gas is discovered and produced, but this is what we call deep water, meaning it's in developments that are over 2,000 meters deep, the water depth alone. So, you know, it requires step-out technology. It requires companies that can bring our scale and capabilities to bear to make this happen. So certainly from discovering in a deep water environment like this to first production in 5 years is an industry record. And we're very proud of it. And we're going to continue to try and replicate that with future developments.
How big a role has technology played in you being able to go deeper, further?
I would say technology at its core, you know, plays a fundamental role in our energy sector, you know, across the spectrum, but in the deep water area in particular, you know, I would say there's a few key things. You know, the technology to be able to image very precisely, you know, what's going on thousands of meters under the Earth's surface, the ability to integrate and build these facilities, you know, as I said, in over 2,000 meters of water. We put the first automated drilling platform out here where we're taking people out of harm's way off the rig floor and automating some of the drilling process. We're using artificial intelligence and data management to remotely monitor and optimize production, reduce emissions, optimize all the aspects that are really critical to this whole operation. So I think at the core of our business is technology. At the core of what we're doing in Guyana, technology plays a really important role.
You mentioned adding 1 FPSO per year. We've seen projections and we've heard from Exxon as well as its other covies in the Stabroek block that there is an estimation of about 10 FPSOs by the end of the decade. How are we looking with that projection? Because it appears as if every few months you're making discoveries.
Well, we had a very strong year last year again in exploration. I think we announced 10 new discoveries. That's 30 discoveries now in total. Again, you think about the period of time, you know, that's over 10 years. And the resources, you know, approaching 11 billion barrels in that period of time. Again, very few places in industry in recent history certainly could point to that kind of growth, you know, that quickly. So, you know, I think it's clear that, you know, you said the third FPSO is due to sail shortly. from Singapore, and we've talked about being up to 1.2 million barrels a day of capacity by the end of 2027. So you can translate that back. You know, we do our best to continually optimize, and things shift a little bit, the nature of what we do, but you know, we're on that target to build to that capacity by the end of 27, which would be 6 boats, and then there's further definition going on for a 7th one, and then up to the 10 that you mentioned earlier on, you know, depending on future success.
Let's talk a bit about the discoveries themselves. We've noticed in recent years that a lot of the exploration, it's happening at low intervals where you've already discovered oil. And we recently learned at a recent press conference that there is some effort to do some tieback as it relates to the Ranger discovery to make it more viable as a commercial reservoir. Tell us a bit about that, and is there a cost factor involved in terms of being able to keep costs down if you're developing wells that are close together?
Yeah, I mean, technology continues to evolve. I mean, it's a very important point to think about, and this is a big area. You know, you think about the aerial extent of the Starbuck block is huge. I mean, you think about Texas
6.6 million acres
as an example. I mean, literally, you know, it's a huge area. So I think we need to think about that in terms of the size. So it's early days in terms of exploring that, but also it doesn't all look the same. So, you know, the nature of the oil and gas and the properties of that oil and gas will vary from development to development. So, you know, you need to be careful saying everything's going to look like Destiny or Unity. You know, we need to be it changes. And the beauty of bringing our capabilities to bear is we can see that and adjust and optimize, you know, as needed as we go. But, you know, one of the things that I think you've seen in the recent exploration phase is we've been using our technology to actually image deeper zones than even the zones that are currently producing the oil and gas. And that's been very successful and actually has led to some of these discoveries we announced recently.
Okay, and focusing now a bit more on Guyana, we have some major landmark projects that are ongoing here. The gas to energy, for example, is pivotal. Some people say it's going to be one of the single most transformational project here in Guyana. When are you looking at a final investment decision on the GTE?
Well, I think it's imminent. I mean, the work is ongoing. There are some necessities to complete before the actual final investment decision, and we're on track to achieve those very soon.
Exxon has said that one of the key motivational factors driving its decision to support this project is the benefits or potential benefits that it's going to bring to Guyana. Why is that important to Exxon as a company in terms of this project being successful and bringing benefits to the country?
Well, you know, we think about what we do. You know, we produce the products that are necessary for human society to progress. We're continuing to do that. You know, we've been investing when other companies have been pulling back, which has been essential as we've gone through the crisis we've seen in recent years. We're doing so with lower emissions continually, year on year, and have made very strong statements about 2030 and 2050 in that regard across our company. And fundamental to all of that is part of our value system is this sustainable development in the countries in which we operate. And I will tell you, having been involved in Guyana from the very, very start, you know, one of the key principles and one of the key commitments that we made is we are going to ensure that we develop our business in this country in a way that provides sustainable benefits to the country and people of Guyana. And a pillar of that is gas to energy. A pillar of that. There are other pillars that you're familiar with in terms of our investment in the community and other things, but a core piece of that is providing affordable, low-emission energy to the people of this country, and moving away from imported fuels and providing a much more reliable, safer, cleaner fuel. And that is part of our sustainable development and our commitment to that sustainable development.
You mentioned lower emissions, and of course, Guyana is pushing significantly its low carbon development strategy, its transition to renewables and cleaner forms of energy. When it comes to carbon capture and storage, which Exxon has a large platform for internationally, are there any plans in terms of bringing that technology to the Guyana operations?
You know, at this point, our focus is every development, make it as low emissions as we practically can. I mean, I think at this stage, it's tremendously a proud achievement for us. We are basically at zero routine flaring offshore today. You know, and we talked about it fairly publicly, we had some challenges as we started up the first Destiny FPSO with our compression system. They have been resolved, and these facilities are running as reliably or more reliably than anything we have in my upstream portfolio today. So, you know, I think that it starts with, again, back to what you said, putting the right technology out there to reduce those emissions to as low as practical, recognizing that all these resources are not the same from the very start, and making that commitment and working with the government and working with the environmental regulator here to achieve those ambitions.
In speaking about the technology that you're using, that which is used on the FPSOs is critical, since that's the vessel that is producing the oil. You've worked with one company in terms of the FPSOs that we've had so far, and for the fifth project, you're going to be moving to a new company. Are there systems that need to be in place to ensure that the technology and the efficiency of these vessels remain consistent as you bring in competition, which is good for the market?
Yeah, it's a good question, Chris. I mean, a few things just again, as we think about what we're doing, people tend to focus on the floating production vessel, the FPSO, because that's what people see. And as you rightly said, that's what produces the oil and gas. But if you look at the full development, you know, way more than half of the cost of the development is the drilling, and the drilling of the wells. And you think about the technology and the capability that goes into that piece as well. But back on the boat itself, or the FPSO as it's called, I mean, we work with both SBM and MODEC all over the world. We're very familiar with their capabilities, whether we're working directly with them or indirectly in partnership. And we're very confident that both can learn and replicate the necessary systems to ensure an efficient development. We're very confident of that.
Okay, so let's now switch to expectations for 2023 in terms of exploration. And we'll wrap up, of course, with your speaking tomorrow at the International Energy Conference. 2023, what could we expect in terms of exploration, and not just in the Stabroek block? Exxon, of course, is the operator in the Kaieteur block, in Kanji block also. And I think that there is a general excitement here in Guyana and internationally also, as it relates to potentially getting a commercial discovery outside of Stabroek, where we know there is oil. What are the plans for this year in that regard?
Well, I would take you back again. Stabroek is a very big area, and you know, takes time to explore, and you know, so far we are still fairly early in this process. So, you know, we are very focused on testing the extent of where there might be, you know, different deposits and different types of oil and gas depositions throughout Stabroek, and we've got a strong commitment along with our partners to maintain a strong focus on exploring that over the next few years. Obviously, we're looking to see, are there opportunities beyond, you know, the Liza area and the area to the southeast that we've discovered thus far. So a large part of our near-term focus is to make sure we understand that. It is really about prioritizing that in the near term, you know, recognizing that you have to balance the effort, you have to balance the capital deployed and the pace of technology in which you can do this. So I would say near term, it's largely focused on the Stabroek block. And, you know, we're continuing to assess the data that we've already gathered from the early wells on Kanji and Kaieteur.
So far, I think the associated gas discovered with the oil is somewhere around 16 trillion cubic feet. Do you anticipate that down the road we could move towards gas development? And I ask you this in the context of our close neighbor Trinidad and Tobago, for example. They started out as an oil producer and now they're more into gas. Do you see that dynamic working here?
I mean, again, as you think about the extent of this block, I mean, the trends vary from, more oily, shall I say, in parts of the block to other parts of the block where, it's more prone to gas. So I think ultimately there will be gas developments in Guyana. Again, it's a question of optimizing the resource for ourselves, for the country, for the people, and doing that in a way that makes most sense. But certainly, we have made some discoveries that have a higher gas oil content than other areas, particularly the Liza area. And at some point down the line, when the general technology and situation is right, then those will likely get developed.
The International Energy Conference opens tomorrow, and you're slated to speak as one of the keynote speakers. Give us an idea of what we can expect in that presentation.
Well, I just think a few simple messages, Chris. I mean, firstly, I think reminding the audience of how important oil and gas is in the macro economy globally. And we've seen, particularly with the crisis in Ukraine, with underinvestment, even going into the crisis in Ukraine, how vitally important it is that we continue to invest in oil and gas. So one message will be, almost in any scenario you can pick, oil and gas remains vital to societal progress, and we can do it with lower emissions, and we can do it and still deliver value to our shareholders. So that'll be a key message. I think the second one will really be around the enormous benefits that we've seen, as you pointed to, here so quickly in this country. And just pointing to some of the examples that I think will really resonate with people on what's been achieved in such a short amount of time. And last but not least, what makes all this happen? And in my mind, it truly is about partnership. It's about partnership the whole way along that value chain. We the co-venturers, we the government, we the suppliers, we the technology contractors. It is a superb example of what an aligned partnership with a common set of goals can do, and apply innovation to that. So I'll be talking a lot about those three themes in general, but using some of our specific Ghana examples to make them, clearer and more compelling for people.
Okay, and finally, I read an analysis from Woodmac recently. They indicated that the demand for oil in the US will decline. I recently saw President Biden had a 10-year window in which he mentioned at the State of the Union. They're looking at around that or just beyond, but what they said interestingly is that they expect that demand in Latin America and other parts of the world to remain robust. How do you see Guyana? What is Guyana's role in this future demand and supply dynamic as it relates to oil and gas?
Well, first of all, again, I have to congratulate Guyana on becoming an oil exporter, so very quickly, and now becoming, producing almost 400,000 barrels a day, almost 400, 360 to 380, and going up. A significant player on the global energy, in the global energy sector. I think, Chris, in our view, the outlook for oil demand, you use the word oil, there's obviously oil and there's gas, but if you're talking oil, the outlook for oil demand remains robust, and will remain robust for, there are multiple scenarios, but for decades to come. So Guyana is blessed with good resources, and it's been exceptionally well developed by good partners. So, Guyana oil, to the extent it has to compete, I think will be very competitive in the marketplace, even in scenarios, to the extent that you can create those scenarios where demand dampens somewhat. Guyana will remain competitive because of the optimum way that these resources are being developed. Gas demand is a different thing and driven by different things, but equally we see gas demand as being robust and growing. These things depend a lot, in gas's case, on what are the substitutes for power generation, and in oil's case, it's primarily dependent what are the substitutes for long-haul transportation. If you can't use oil, how do you drive long-haul transportation? EVs have targeted a sector of that with very short-haul private cars. So a lot of uncertainty in that space. We strongly believe demand will remain robust for decades to come. But we continue to look at the signposts, and if that changes, we will adjust with the change.
Mallon, President of ExxonMobil Upstream, thank you.
Thank you.